I'm Dr. Kimberly Manning.
And this is Dr. Ashley McMullen. And you're listening to the Human Doctor Podcast, where we explore the human side of medicine, along with teaching, living, learning, and all things in between. Using the power of storytelling, conversation, and connectedness.
Hey, we're two dope academic internal medicine doctors, but we ain't your doctors. So if you perceive anything we say here as medical advice, no, it ain't that. Also, the things we say, they only reflect our brilliant Black woman magic mind and not our employers.
You could have been anywhere, y'all, but you chose to be here with us, and we appreciate you. Let's go.
All right. This meeting is being recorded.
Yes, it sure is. Thank you guys for being here.
Yeah.
I'm so excited.
We're sitting in a room and we have like some podcast royalty in the room. I'm not going to even call them out. But what I will say is, people think our operation is much fancier than it is. Mm-hmm. And it's not.
Yeah, cat's out the bag. This is it right here.
This is what it looks like.
Yes.
I mean, it just is like two homegirls on Zoom. Like, did you record? Oh, okay, you got that. Yeah, that's how it pretty much works.
Yes.
Yeah, so let's check in. Mm-hmm. How are you doing today on a scale of 1 to 5? For those unfamiliar, 5 is amazing, 1 not so amazing, mm-hmm. and you are welcome to use decimals.
I'm going to say I am sitting around a 4.8.
Oh, 4.8.
Yeah, which is like pretty high for me.
Okay, adjective on the 4.8?
I think a mix of grateful and awe-inspired.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, for a number of reasons, even in a time such as this.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the things that I'm coming into this conference with is I got to see my mom on Mother's Day, which is a gift that I don't take lightly. So I got to go to Houston and come into the conference. Seeing Kimberly in 3 dimensions is also something that I don't get to do very often. So that is a plus. And then I don't know if anybody in the room got a chance to attend that plenary, but seeing Dr. Manning on the mic, putting together those rhyming skills, hitting that intro in metered verse, is something that one doesn't see often at a medical conference. So, talk about awe-inspiring. But there was a lot within that session that left me feeling good.
Yeah. I think I am a 4.6. I'm very, very, very excited to be here, but as you can see by my handheld fan, I'm dealing with a personal summer right now. That's what I like to refer to menopause as. I am a high number today because I have a son who is graduating from high school. Yes. Shout out to us for getting somebody up out of our house. For those who have had children graduating from high school or college, what nobody tells you along with all the celebration is that there is a lot of text messages that you get just asking you for random stuff. And all of it costs you money. So just today, like right before I got ready to introduce our national president of SGIM, Jada Bussey Jones, I get like 3 texts in a row. One was for a Chromebook charging cord. The other one was for a headband that one puts over their locks so that if you have a natural hairstyle, your hat stays on your head, which apparently is a thing. That you have like several different ones that you can find on Amazon and places like that. And then the other one was just asking me to get some Sour Patch Kids in bulk. All of this happened 1, 2, 3 right before I had to go up and introduce Dr. Bussey Jones. So as cool as I seem sometimes, this is what's really happening with me, a personal summer and requests for random things for my child. So yeah, that's what's going on.
I love that, man. Yeah.
So should we orient people a little bit about the Human Doctor?
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm putting that on you.
Naturally, that's the best work of an attending is to suggest something and then go ahead and hand that ball over to you. Well, let's see. Who in the audience has been following us for a while? We've got some faithful listeners.
Okay.
I want to, first of all, acknowledge and thank you guys who've been rocking with us for a couple years.
You and our moms. Thank you.
Yes. Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, what do you think? Should we start like where we conceptualized it? Or?
I think, you know what? We were thinking a little bit about the theme of the conference and this ideas to action. And, you know, a lot of people in this room have submitted workshops, attended workshops. And sometimes when you do something like that, you think it's not going to go anywhere. You actually think you're like just putting something on your CV. You don't actually imagine it changing what somebody's going to do. And I think for our like conceptualizing us, I just want to share something that we experienced. So Ashley and I first met when I had a visit to UCSF. She had just finished her chief year. She was on my list of meetings. I became obsessed with her and wanted to be her friend, even though I'm 20 years older than her, but I was like, please, I want to be your friend.
It was mutual, just so
yes,
you
it was
know.
mutual. So we remained in touch, and then we had the opportunity to work together on Emily Silverman's The Nocturnist podcast, which we strongly recommend you listen to. And we did a special series called Black Voices in Healthcare. And on our very last episode of that, Ashley and I were just having a conversation, and we would have these sidebar conversations. We're like, you know what? Us talking to each other would be dope. It would be such a good conversation. It would be a good podcast. Problem was, we didn't know nothing about podcasting at all. And our experiences with podcasting involved whole production teams and like people who had like all kinds of fancy equipment and sound checking and producers calling you and setting up the meetings and everything. And yeah, we didn't have time for all that. So I attended this digital medical education conference. Shout out to Shreya Trivedi, who was the person who invited me to that. And another thing I recommend you check out. And one of the sessions was by Adam Rodman. I think Adam does bedside rounds.
Yeah.
Bedside rounds. And his session was on how do you put together a podcast. And Adam concretely explained how just somebody who did not know what they were doing could go from zero to hero on a podcast. And I took a whole bunch of notes. He was like, you could use this, you could do this, you could just use Zoom, you could do this, you could do this. So I get off of this session because it was virtual, and I was super hyped. I called Ashley, as a good attending would, getting ready to give you something to do. I was like, oh my gosh, this dude, Adam Rodman, told us exactly how to do it. These are the notes. And fortunately for me, you got excited.
Exactly. Just to also conceptualize, like before I got on to a podcast with a nocturnist, I did not listen to any podcast, let alone did I know how to create one. And to take, you know, these very detailed notes, and I think there were slides attached to it, but also like going through YouTube and just finding tutorials online, I was just like, if I can figure this out, literally anybody can. And thankfully I did. You know, it took a little bit of trial and error, but part of it was just kind of finding our cadence, finding our rhythm, finding our mission also, and translating that into our platform. And thankfully the wheels are still turning.
Yeah. So essentially what we do is, and it's actually a wellness activity for us too. Ashley's in San Francisco, I'm in Atlanta. We probably see each other face to face once, maybe twice a year.
Yeah.
But we see each other and talk once a week. And generally we just kind of chop it up, and then one of us tells the other a story. Today, since we're here live with you, we are each going to tell each other a story. And, you know, again, people think that we know what the story is beforehand, but no. I'm usually right now years old when I hear what Ashley's about to tell me, and that allows for us to react in real time and not kind of like, oh, really? I kind of liken it to like if you have already gone and seen the patient and read the whole H&P, and then the medical student is presenting to you and you're trying to act surprised. Oh, assessment and plan, community-acquired pneumonia. that is a good thought. A thought that I had 20 minutes ago. So we wanted it to be sort of authentic so that we could react in real time. Mm-hmm. What's on your mind today? What do you want to share?
Actually, what's on my mind is Dr. Withers. So for folks who weren't in the plenary, this is the gentleman who founded street medicine. But I think what stuck with me most from his conversation is centering a patient's reality, which has a lot to do with centering a patient's story. That orientation towards building trust and meeting a patient where they're at, and the need to kind of take off a bit of your own privilege, your own agenda in order to meet people in that space. Like, I walked away from that just like damn, that is real.
Yeah, and also, again, ideas to action. He saw something that was a need and saw like, oh wow, maybe we could do something different, do something a little bit more. And it's always exciting when you have an idea and then you see it like grow into something and you didn't even realize what was gonna happen when you were doing that, right? So that was really moving. I guess that was a lot deeper than the recommendation that I was gonna have. My recommendation is for outside. Just period. Mm-hmm. So we are here in Florida right now, and it is sunny here. Mm-hmm. It was like 87 degrees yesterday, and I had a nice lunch on a patio with Dr. Higgins and Dr. Costco, and it was just nice to be outside and not talking about medicine. Mm. It's important, of course, for us to absorb all the learning and everything, but I just want to recommend that you take a moment with people while you're here. Put your hands at your side, put your phone in your bag or in your pocket, and give them your undivided attention for at least 2 to 3 minutes. And if they're talking about something, keep on listening, right? Because these personal connections, I think they fill our cup. It's one of my favorite things about the SGIM meeting. It is a meeting of connection and of building relationships and strengthening relationships. And there's people even in this room that I met in rooms at SGIM, and then we realized we had similar interests and decided, hey, you know what, we ought to present something together. I see Gaten Stroh here, and Gaten and I were in a workshop together years ago, and we just started chatting. We had a mutual friend, and then, poor Gaten let me have his cell phone number. And my sidebar, y'all, my friends all know this. I get really excited right before SGIM and Academic Internal Medicine Week, and I'll have these explosion of ideas, and I'll just start submitting workshops.
Yes.
And the call goes something like this. Hey, are you going to SGIM? Yes, I'm going to SGIM. Oh, okay. And that's it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Then what happens like 2 months later is, oh, you're on this workshop with me. It's on Thursday. It's at 1 o'clock. Mm-hmm. What workshop? Oh, I wasn't going to tell you about it unless it got accepted. You ready to tell me a story?
I'm very ready.
Okay. Sis, what's the what?
The what for my story is trust.
Trust.
Yes.
Okay.
So this story actually starts, actually not too long after I met you, which was in the very beginning of my job on faculty. So I'm a general internist. I started my primary care position at the San Francisco VA back in 2019. And I think anybody here who has started clinic in a new place, not only is it challenging sometimes to take on new patients, but specifically taking on new patients who had another provider before you and kind of having to start that connection when you're already kind of being compared to somebody else. But one of the patients that stood out to me was a person that, was described as having a lot of complex medical issues. He described this veteran as someone being, kind of eccentric, a very devout, religious leader, and having a lot of difficulties with the health system. But as a way of kind of placating me, he was just like, don't worry, he probably won't want to see you anyway. So I was like, all right, cool, we'll see how this goes. I met this person after just maybe weeks to maybe even just a few months on faculty. And this veteran and I did have race concordance, but that is about it as far as similarities. I remember he was very tall, even though he was stooped over a little bit. I could tell he was someone who was like very imposing, like back in his day. He had some very long dreadlocks that looked like they hadn't seen water or shampoo in quite some time. And, you know, was just very much like kind of on the defense from the jump. And so we started our visit, and it was one of those sessions where I maybe said like a handful of words. You know, it was just like a lot of listening. It took a lot of time over time, as we've talked about before. And honestly, like, you know, I can't think of much as far as my training that was helpful in that situation. You know, no amount of agenda setting or like motivational interviewing could really like ground me in what that person needed. Everything that, you know, was on his list of medical issues that, you know, I would have liked to address, you know, he had an explanation for. That was not what I thought was true. Every medication that was suggested, he had an allergy to, or, you know, had a reaction to, or read something online that was, you know, put him against it. Every specialist that he saw was, he would go once and then come back and like, that person is a quack, they're out of their mind, I'm not going back. So, you know, at the core of his relationship to our health system, and especially to doctors in general, was just distrust. Like everything was kind of seated in a dynamic of contention. Like he had to kind of protect himself from us. He had to advocate for himself in ways that didn't quite make sense on the surface. But, you know, again, kind of borrowing the language earlier, just like having to center myself in his reality was the thing that was most needed for our relationship. And, you know, with time and, you know, honestly, with very little intervention or suggestion on my part, you know, he came to trust me. He started referring to me at first as Doogie Howser, which apparently is some character for some show. Just kidding.
We go through this a lot where she like, but you know who Doogie Howser is?
I do know.
Okay.
I looked it up beforehand. I'm just kidding. Kidding. Neil Patrick Harris, all right? That much I haven't watched any of the episodes, but I know who it is.
Before How I Met Your Mother.
Yes, exactly. But, you know, after I was Doogie Howser, then I became, you know, he would describe me as, this is my doctor. This is my doctor. And, you know, the sacredness of that relationship, that title with a patient like this was everything. Even though, you know, every interaction was kind of challenging, and it's hard to sit still on your hands without like, actually, no, it's this. Like, no, that's the wrong way to think about it. This is actually what the science shows. And to have to kind of dial that back was really difficult, but a gift that I will say come through the VA to have a little extra time with patients like this. And so over time, you know, this person, I'll call him, you know, Mr. Jones, he was still getting sicker and sicker. And one of the things that happened, unfortunately, was that he developed end-stage kidney disease from a condition that was both preventable and treatable. And he had to go on dialysis, which was devastating, because this is a man who really valued his autonomy and his ability to kind of dictate his interactions with the health system. So now 3 days a week, you know, he's having to schlep out to dialysis centers. And on top of that, he lives very far. So he moved to a rural area of California, but still wanted to get his care in San Francisco with me. But his dialysis was out in the community, and he would often end up in hospitals in the community just from kind of random complications. So one of the things that was challenging along with this is that vascular access was hard. He had a lot of complications and ultimately just ended up having an indwelling line for his dialysis. I heard one day that he had gotten admitted, which again was not uncommon for things like shortness of breath, hypertensive emergency. But the thing that we found out was that he was growing bacteria in his blood. And so I was just like, well, he's at a community hospital, you know, hopefully they will take care of him. I was off of work and I got a text message from one of my nurses, amazing nurse, who usually is very great at triaging and very much like helps to protect our time when we're off. But she texted me and it was just like, Mr. Jones's family has been calling the clinic. They won't speak to anybody else. They only want to speak to you. So I was like, thank you for letting me know. I will call him. So I'm on my couch, you know, I'm in sweats, you know, about to turn the TV on, and I call on my cell phone, which again is not something I do very often. And the family's like, Dr. McMullen, thank you so much for calling. We didn't know who else to turn to. Apparently, Mr. Jones had self-directed his discharge from the hospital. This was before the cultures had come back. And so the hospital had been calling the family like overnight, telling him he has to come back in, he has to come back in. Mr. Jones was not having it. He did not believe he was sick. He did not believe he had bacteria in his blood. That was the reality that he was focused on. And so now it's the next day. We're talking 12 hours since what this line is still in. And they had called 911 twice. Twice EMS had come to the house. And because Mr. Jones said he didn't want to go, EMS left. And so I got on the phone and they told me all this. And it was just like, we can't, he's not listening to us. He won't go in no matter how many times we've tried to tell him, but he'll listen to you. So I was like, okay, put me on FaceTime. I changed shirts at this point. So I'm FaceTiming with him. Of course, he looks terrible, but he is very clear. He's like, I am not going back to that hospital. They don't treat me right. They don't listen. I feel fine. I'm not going. And this was a good amount of time back and forth. So I was like, okay, will you come to San Francisco? Will you come to the VA? And he was just like, okay. Without acknowledging that he was sick, without asking what for, whatever, there was something there. I think he wanted help, but was afraid to acknowledge, what was actually going on within him, and was so averse to the health system. So his family put him in a vehicle, drove an hour and a half with traffic to get to San Francisco VA. I'm calling ahead. Thankfully, our friend Robbie was in the ED that day.
Shout out to Robbie.
Shout out to Robbie. And we were able to get the line out and get him treated. And so, suffice to say, we're still, there's still a lot going on with his care that is difficult. But, this is why I went into primary care. Despite all of the headaches, issues with RVUs, issues going on with the VA right now, it's like nobody can tell me that isn't worth it. And then also, there aren't a lot of ways in which we get to save lives so acutely in primary care. And what I realized, it was not me going in guns blazing, getting the line out. It was trust that saved that man's life in that setting, and trust that came with time over time, trust that came with sitting still, and letting the patient guide me in how to care for him.
Well, one, I'm glad it was you. No, really, I'm glad it was you.
Yeah.
That was his doctor, and I'm glad that you availed yourself through your cell phone, because that was a decision that you made in that moment. And I know a lot of people in the room have moments where they make a decision to kind of have a little bit of a boundary issue. And I think some of the best people in primary care and general medicine kind of have to decide where that's going to happen. I think as I'm listening to the story, one of the things that I keep thinking about is why doesn't he trust the healthcare system?
Yeah.
During the time of COVID, there were just so many narratives about why people didn't trust something, and then you kind of get this idea in your head of what that is. Oh, why? Well, she described that he had locks, which suggests that maybe he's a person of African descent. She said they had racial concordance. That's why he doesn't trust the healthcare system. But, nobody is a monolith. And I started learning in the time of COVID that, you can't just assume that somebody just sort of, this is sort of the reason why people like you do not trust healthcare systems. What is your individual narrative? What happened to you that could have made you not want to go to the hospital? And I guess I wonder, was there any particular incident that you know of with him?
I mean, it's like you said, he's not a monolith. There were multiple incidences, and I think that a big part of it was also a history of trauma, and trauma that I don't even fully understand in my time with him. It's complicated, and even in the best kind of trauma-informed way, it's hard when you have limited time and you have a specific thing that you're trying to do with someone. And I think it's also, he's not someone who's easy or that it's naturally to empathize with. I think that was something that I had to learn early on, was that sometimes empathy is a choice that you have to make. And you have to do it even when everything in you wants to do otherwise. Yep. Because when people are kind of like throwing stuff back in your face, when they're angry, when they just seem like difficult, quote unquote, it almost gives you a license to not care or to care less, where it's just like, it's his decision, so, and this was written all over his chart even before I saw him. Like, I didn't know that there were so many ICD-10 codes for medical non-adherence.
Wow.
But yeah, it just kind of, you get to kind of shape a narrative outside of that individual that kind of excuses you from, any real responsibility to try to make headway. And it might not be you. That's the other thing I had to realize, is just like, I can try my best, but I might not always be the one to get through to somebody. And that's okay too.
Yeah. And sometimes people are difficult to protect themselves. Because if they have been let down enough times, then why should I open up to you and then have you turn your back on me or demonstrate in some way that I wasn't worth it? So why don't I, like, off cuff, just let you know that I'm not worth your time already? Wow, that's really powerful. Yeah. I'm glad that you were his primary doctor.
I'm glad. Sometimes I'm just like, maybe Gurpreet would be better at this.
I know. Well, I'm also glad you had an iPhone so that you could FaceTime. Yeah. Then again, I'm in a cell phone discordant relationship with my husband, and so I have all of the apps to allow me to video chat him. We working on it, y'all. So keep checking on me.
Oh, is he an Android user?
He is. I was trying not to say the word, but
sorry.
You said it. But not everybody has the Meet app or whatever, the one that you can look at people with. But
yeah,
I'm glad that you were able to reach that patient.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, how is the patient doing now?
I mean, still a struggle. Yeah. But it's been really great getting to know his family more. That has added a little bit more, context to some of his behavior, and also just to see like how much he's loved. Yeah. I think that sometimes that's also hard to capture in a visit, that this is somebody's loved one, and it's a privilege to be able to kind of see that outside of the office space. So
yeah, I think a lot about what we do is about just being willing to stay, because I work at Grady Hospital. We have a lot of patients there who are hurting and who've had trauma, and when people are hurting and they have trauma, they can be really, really hard on you. And I'm learning also that sort of extremes of emotion has very little to do with me or you. For example, the patient who says, "You're the worst doctor of all time, I hate you," it probably doesn't really have much to do with you. Also, the patient who says you're the best doctor ever in all of primary care of all time, that probably don't have nothing to do with you either. So just realizing that somewhere in the middle, once there's time over time, like Ashley said, with time over time, then that does become about you. And the time over time that you put in with Mr. Jones, that was what made him agree to go to the hospital.
Absolutely.
So shout out to you.
Thank you. Well, enough about me. One of the more exciting pieces for me is getting to listen to your stories and hear from your wisdom and your deep archival reach. So let me turn the question back to you and ask you, what is the what?
Okay, so kings, queens, and non-binary royalty, I'm going to involve you into this decision. Sometimes Ashley and I get ready to do what for me, and I have a choose your own adventure. The choose your own adventure is between two whats, and each one is connected to its own story. So whichever one you choose is the one that we're going to go with. The first what is inertia.
Inertia, oh, that's such a good word.
The other what is reputation.
Okay. Reputation and inertia. I'm conflicted. I'm gonna need some help from y'all.
What should she pick?
All right, hands up for inertia. Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That's a majority.
I was like, we got a winner.
All right, okay. Inertia, it is.
If y'all want to hear Reputation, catch her after.
All right, so I am going to take y'all back probably about 10 or 12 years. I was on the hospital service at Grady and preparing for like a 2-week stint, or I think a 1-month stint on service. And I'm a clinician educator, so the space that I work in, I usually have medical students and interns and a senior resident on the service. And so this was in August. And August, for those who work in med ed, that's a time when people are like trying to get letters, they're applying to residency and everything. But it's kind of a sweet spot because most of the people by August, they already have their letters. So you get to just do your job and you don't have to be kind of thinking about somebody trying to get a letter from you or anything, you just do your job. So I was getting ready to start the service, and before I get ready to start service, one of my colleagues reaches out and says, hey, you got a minute, I want to run something by you. And I said, okay. And they're like, this student that you're getting ready to have on your team is very special. And I said, okay, special how? Like, let's just say I had this student on my team as an M3, and they asked me to write a letter, and I said I couldn't do it. I cannot write a strong letter of support for you. So they're gonna be on your team, good luck! And I was like, okay. They're like, I'm just giving you a heads up, they're probably gonna ask you for a letter. And that letter is, they don't really have nobody else to get a letter from. And I was like, okay. And I'm gonna pause for a second, and it's interesting because actually this does kind of fit reputation also. So look, you got 2 for the price of 1. It got me thinking a little bit about this idea of sort of reputational inertia. Like when somebody tells you something about somebody and the word is out about somebody, it's very hard to shake it. And this was somebody that I deeply, deeply admired and trusted who told me this, who said that this person was, they kept using the word special. Like, ooh, he's special. Ooh, I can't put my finger on it. It's just, I couldn't write a letter. And if somebody that you deeply respect can't write a letter, that's bad. So I start asking other people about the student, which I really shouldn't have done because that was 10 years ago, before I was the mature adult I am now. And I was like, what's up with this student? And I would hear all these different things like, oh, he disorganized. Oh, he's strange. Oh, he be all over the place. Oh, it's gonna be a long 2 weeks for you. Oh, and so I took all of that and I carried it into the start of our team. And in comes this student, and I'm telling you, it was like something off of like a sitcom. Like, dude comes busting in the room, and he's got a whole bunch of papers, and he tripped, and a whole bunch of papers fell, and he's like picking them up, and he's like, Dr. Reddy, hi! And like, as he's holding papers in his hand, he reaches his hand out to shake my hand, and this was not a student I'd ever worked with before. I didn't know him. And I was like, okay, I already heard all this stuff about you, so I already had the reputational inertia piece in my head already. And then you come in here and you drop all the papers and you confirm all the things that I heard about you already. So I said, all right, you know what? I'm gonna give you a shot. We're gonna let you pick up a patient today. You're gonna present this patient to me. And that's what happens. And he presents the patient, and when I tell you, it was all over the place. It was word salad. It was like assessment and plan. This is a 22-year-old. Medical history, social history, meds, surgical, assessment and plan again. This is what happened in the emergency department. I was like, what is going on? And the more that he talked, the more the team kind of stared and made him more uncomfortable. And the more uncomfortable he got, the worse he did. And he had a lot of like just quirks, like things that, like, he did certain things when he was nervous, like he would like shake one of his hands, and I realized as I was watching him that, like, this is probably a lot deeper than just quirk, this, that, disorganized. I was like, that. And you know, it's not my job to come in and try to diagnose you or psychoanalyze you, but it is my job to meet you with some kind of empathy. And so after the very first day, I pulled him aside and I sat down with him and I said, look, we need a hard reset. Here's the deal. I was actually told some things about you before you came onto my team. And I don't like that I have to admit that, but I did. And I think it's impacting the way that I'm interacting with you. And I feel like that's not fair to you. And I feel like it's like creating in me like this ball that's already moving in a direction that nobody's sticking their foot in front of. So I need us to start over. And he was like, okay. And he told me that it's been very hard for him in clinical rotations. Socially, he struggles with people. It just hasn't always been a thing where it's been easy for him. And a lot of those social skills, they come out in clinical environments because it's a big component in it is those interpersonal and communication skills. And I said, I tell you what, tell me from your own perspective, what do you think is kind of different about you? He was like, well, one of the things is when I get really nervous, I just start to lose track of where everything is. And I said, okay, what do you think makes you nervous? Well, it makes me nervous when somebody furrows their brow at me like they don't know what I'm talking about, which happens to me a lot because people don't know what I'm talking about. I said, okay, I tell you what, let's do this. Let's put the order of your H&P on a piece of paper so that you know the order of it. And if you feel nervous, say, ooh, I'm getting nervous. And that'll be like a sign that you could kind of restart. So I said, and I'm gonna work on furrowing my brow. And if I am furrowing my brow, I want you to let me know that I'm looking at you crazy, or that you're getting nervous. And he said, okay. So and I said, and you know, I'm trying to work to unhear some of the things I've heard because that's not fair to you. Conversely, he'd heard things about me too. See, the places where he struggled were the places where I don't struggle. I love people. I'm good with people. And he'd heard that I was cool and that I was nice and that I was, you know, fun and all of these things, which, I mean, are true. No, but it led to how I was received, like, right, by the whole team. So that same reputational inertia that he was fighting, I was benefiting from it, right? Because everybody already had whatever thought they had, right? And I said, what I want you to do for me is I want you to come in here not thinking about what you heard about me. I want you to think that this lady is my attending, I'm on her team, and we're gonna start fresh, both of us. And I said, okay. I said, and then when you need to give me any feedback, I want it to come from not from what you heard about me, but from what you think too, and I'll do the same. And he did great. He crushed it. He crushed it. It was just like, it was to me like a bike that needed a chain popped in. I cry every time I listen to the podcast. But I looked through, you know, some of the things, those emails that I gotten about him, and I just thought, oh my gosh, you know, people are so busy and they don't take a minute to just be like, whoa, what's going on here? And the only reason I think I did is because he asked me on the first day for a letter. He said, I want to do medicine. And my clerkship, none of my clerkship attendings can write a letter for me. And I'm just letting you know from the beginning, I'm going to ask you for a letter. And then the first day he gave me that word salad presentation, and I was like, Lord have mercy. What is we gonna do? So every time I think about this student, and I think about how I stuck my foot in front of the ball and stopped it from rolling, and how well he did. I mean, I wrote him a strong letter. I was not lying. I wrote it based on my experience. And based on my experience during that 2 weeks, he crushed it. And he matched, and he is somewhere living his best life, board certified in internal medicine in a subspecialty, and is thriving. And every now and then I hear from him, and he's like, that was a pivotal month in my life because it allowed me to control my narrative. And I started, instead of me waiting for somebody to stick their foot in front of the ball, now I come in and I tell people, all right, y'all, here's the thing with me. I'm a little quirky. If I get nervous, I get disorganized. So y'all, and I'll just tell you if I'm feeling nervous. Or if something's going on with me, I'm gonna let you know. And no, it wasn't because I had an ICD-9 code to describe what was going on with him. I am not, faculty, student, assistance program, psychologist. I'm none of those things. I'm just a human being who has been tasked with trying to help medical students thrive and become good doctors. And they are actually tasked, they don't realize it, but they're tasked with helping me to be a good clinician educator. Even though they didn't necessarily sign up to do that. And I think some of it still aligns with the story that you told, which is this decision to choose empathy. And even if sometimes the impetus for that is not something that you're proud of, which for me is, I'm the last one painted into the corner that's gonna have to write your letter. I'm gonna need to figure something out. What if we just started with that? Like, I heard this about you, but you know what? I gotta just start from scratch. And even now that I'm more senior, when somebody starts to tell me something about somebody, I'm like, you know what? I actually don't even want to know. I just want to figure it out for myself. And I'm actually also finding that people that I heard that were the bee's knees and hung the moon, they didn't hang the moon for me. They all right. So it goes both directions. So yeah.
Wow. I'm really glad that you were his attendant.
Yeah, I am too.
Man. And I love kind of thinking about reputational inertia both ways, because we always, think and hear about kind of like the problem people.
Yeah.
And, the willingness to throw a flag on the play. I remember as an intern, a faculty member actually mentioned to me some things that had been said about me from a previous attending. And her willingness to name that I'm looking at you through a fresh lens. I've never thought to, approach a learner with that type of transparency until you reminded me of that just now.
And it's not too often in life that we get that, just a fresh start. We were both chief residents, and I'm sure you remember that moment when you got asked to be chief resident and it got made public.
Yep.
Nobody gave you feedback anymore. You show up, people are like, oh yeah, you're gonna be chief. Lucky me.
Yep.
And that's your feedback.
Yep.
Like you finish your month, they're like, yeah, chief. But you still are looking to grow too. So maybe it's just an opportunity for us to stick our foot in front of the balls that need to stop rolling, or kick the ball that's sitting still. And ideas to action. The theme of this meeting is really that. It's about kicking balls and stopping balls. And some balls feel like we can't do anything. But I had a patient say to me one day recently, one person in one moment doing one thing for one person other than themselves go a lot further than you think. And that's whether you're working at the San Francisco VA, taking a house call by FaceTime because you're smart and you got an iPhone.
Yep.
Or something like agreeing to give somebody who got a reputation that doesn't seem like they can ever do anything about it, a chance. Or if it's something like figuring out how to do your job in the current climate that we're in.
Yeah.
There's balls you can kick, there's balls you can stop, but you're still one person in one moment who can do one thing for one person other than yourself, and that can go a long way. Sis, as always, we like to normalize affirmations for each other. I love you. I'm super, super grateful that on that very full schedule at UCSF back in 2019, that they put you on my schedule. But just a reminder to all of you that a brief meeting can plant a seed that with time over time and attending workshops by Adam Rodman can lead to a podcast and a great friendship.
Absolutely. Well, I love you too, sis. I want to express gratitude for you believing in me to be able to produce a podcast. And you know what a gift it is to be able to bring this to a live audience and see this grow. So thank you for being the best mentor, big sis, friend, and everything.
Despite my youthful glow.
Yes.
Thanks, y'all, for being here. We appreciate you.
All right.
That wraps up this week's episode of the Human Doctor Podcast.
Special thanks to our favorite brother gastroenterologist, Dr. Chuma Obiname, for the beats. Shout out to the Dr. Ashley McMullen for editing and production.
Mad love to our podcast family at The Nocturnist and the Clinical Problem Solvers, our Med Twitter fam.
And especially shout out to all of you, our listeners.
Until next week, remember,
we see you and you are enough. Holla!